Happy Wacky Tacky Wednesday, you guys. As you can see, I am dressed very tacky for you guys. If you notice, my hoodie going with my lovely ears and my fabulous earrings don't match whatsoever to what I am wearing. So I hope you guys are enjoying Wacky Tacky Wednesday. Make sure you send your teachers your pictures so that you can try to get on Instagram with the best Wacky Tacky outfit. And not to mention, it'll give me some great laughs to see how creative you guys get with Wacky Tacky Wednesday. Okay, let's go ahead and get into today. So yesterday, you guys took our first online PB1 focus task. I hope you guys did a good job. I do want to give you an example of what your CER should have looked like to answer the question. So I'm going to go ahead and quickly go over that before we get into today's lesson, which will start our new chapter. So here was the question again. How is the mother able to communicate with her calf across a distance when they are separated? Make a claim and support it with evidence from the unit to describe how this is possible. Be sure to explain how your evidence supports your claim. So this is my answer. I wrote my answer based on all of the evidence or based on all of the lessons we had this week and last week. And so your answer should be very similar to this one. The mother is able to communicate with her calf across a distance when they're separated by using sound. So that is my claim. I restated the question by giving the answer as well. During the STEM, we learned that sound travels as a wave. That is my first piece of evidence. During the instructional video, we learned a wave is a pattern of motion that travels away from a source, which means the mother dolphin's sound travels away from her into her calf. That is our second piece of evidence. According to the text, Patterns in Communication, mothers and their calves use whistles to find each other when they are separated. This proves when mother dolphins are separated from their calves, they can communicate by sound. So this was my third piece of evidence here, and this is my reasoning, me summing up this paragraph by saying what all that information proved or what it all meant or what it all showed me, which is pretty much you restating your claim just in a different way. So again, I got all of my evidence from the STEM, from the instructional videos, which mainly is that definition of wave, and also from the text we've been reading, Patterns in Communication. I can't wait to actually grade these assessments and see how you guys did, and celebrate you for getting those great grades. Let's go ahead and get into our next chapter. So we're still talking about the bottlenose dolphins. This time we are actually going to dig a little deeper. In that last chapter, we were able to figure out and answer the question and also help the superintendent by answering the question of how do they communicate, right? So we know that the dolphins are communicating by sound. Now we actually want to get into another big question. How does sound energy travel? So yes, the dolphins are using sound, but now we need to actually figure out how is that sound energy traveling. We know something about sound energy traveling through waves, but we also want to now dig a little deeper and think about that sound energy traveling through other types of materials and through other types of things. This is our vocabulary word for today, material. Material means what an object is made of. So for example, my hoodie, right, is made of cotton, and my ears is made of some feathers, and I have some sequins on here. I don't know if you can see that, but those are different types of material. And so we're going to think about that today in our observations as we figure out how to answer this question, how sound energy travels. So as we think about sound traveling and sound energy traveling, we're going to investigate through observations how the sound travels through different things like air, like water, like solid materials like furniture or walls or anything solid. Sound. We're going to see if sound can still travel through those things by completing our class assignment for today. So let's go ahead and look at our class assignment. As usual, you have access to your book right here. Our objective is always in red. I will be able to identify materials that sound can travel through. And our vocabulary is always in blue. So whenever you're asked for a definition, please remember to use what is in blue and not a Googled answer, because we want to be on the same page. So please use this definition of the word material. Independently, you will complete your PDN. And together, we're going to complete part of today's assignment, which is right here. So sound on the move, what does sound travel through? And again, we're going to do some observations today. Here are the directions. You are going to follow your teacher's directions for listening to sounds. So I'm going to create some sounds, and you need to make sure you're following those directions and doing it as well. So even if you need to pause the video so that you can create that sound, please do. For each sound, you're going to write the source of the sound in the source column, which is here. In the listener column, you're going to write who the listener is, which is here. And then we're going to visualize that sound energy traveling from the source to the listener. And in this column right here, you're going to write what the sound travels through. In this first column, this is where we're going to try to describe what sound we are creating. So our first sound is actually going to be my voice, right? So if we were in the classroom and I was to ask a question, what is the definition of source? I will want you to think about that sound, and I will want you to think about the source of that sound. So if I am asking you as the teacher a question, right? Teacher voice would actually be the sound. Who would the source be in this situation? And so remembering the definition of source, the source is where something comes from. So where is the sound coming from? 5 seconds to think of that answer. All right, so the source would actually be me, the teacher, because that is where the sound is coming from. Now, who is the listener, right? Who's listening to my voice in this moment? You are. The student is listening to the teacher voice. And if we were in the classroom, even though right now you're still listening to my voice through something else, but if we were in the classroom and I were to speak to you and you were hearing my voice, what would my voice be traveling through, right? What would the sound of my voice be traveling through? And it would actually be traveling through the air. So that is our first example. That is our first observation. That was pretty easy, thinking about our voice. But I want to pause just for a second to think about what the sound was traveling through. So this time, the sound was traveling through the air, right? We don't see it, but it is actually an energy that is moving and traveling through the air. Let's go ahead and go to our second one. So this is where even if you need to pause and you want to test it out yourself, that's totally cool. So here's our second one. It is actually going to be me clapping my hands. So when I clap my hands, what is the source of that sound? 5 seconds to think of that answer. The source of that sound and where that sound is coming from when we clap is my hands, right? So hands are the source. Who is the listener? Even when I'm clapping, I am the listener. So you could say you are the listener. You can simply say me. You can simply say student. For me, it would be teacher. But the person is listening to the sound that's coming from the hands. I want you to think about, where does that sound travel through? Or what does that sound travel through? So when we clap, we hear the sound. The sound is moving through what? The sound is moving through the air. That is how the sound is getting from my hands to your ears. So that is our second observation. Let's go ahead with a third one, which is a little more interesting and maybe a little more difficult. And then you're going to complete the last two on your own. So what I want you to do at home is to put your hand over your ear, right? So it's almost like you're cupping your ear. And then you are going to, with one finger, tap your hand and see if you can hear a sound. So you may have to pause the video to complete that observation. And we're going to say this is a tapping ear sound. So again, your hand is over your ear. You are tapping your hand and seeing if you can hear a sound. Now, what is the source of this sound? Right? Thinking about where the sound is coming from. Who's creating or what is creating this sound? And the answer to that is actually my finger. My finger is the source. If not for my finger, I wouldn't hear a sound. So my finger is tapping my hand, which is creating the sound. Who is the listener? It's me, right? You can again say student or teacher, but you are hearing or creating that sound with your finger, and you are the listener. Now, this is a little different from the last two. When I think about what the sound is traveling through, what am I tapping and what is the sound going through? And you have to think about what you are using to help provide that sound. And it is your hand. So the sound is actually going through your hand to get to your ear so that you can hear it. Now at home, don't drive anybody crazy, but at home, you are going to come up with two different sounds. So this could be, for example, if you want to put your ear on the table at your home, whatever you're working on, put your ear on the table, tap the table and see what you hear, right? If you want to close your bedroom door or step outside your apartment and close the door, knock on the door, see if you hear a sound. What is the source? Who is the listener? And what is that sound going through if I am knocking on a door or if I am tapping on the table? You still need to answer these questions as you create your own two observations. So I'm going to be real curious to see what you guys come up with, because I know you guys can get very creative, especially in the house. So don't forget, you're going to come up with your own two sounds. You can simply close the door, knock on the door. What's the source? Who's the listener? What is the sound going through? You can put your ear to the table. Be very creative. Find some cool things around the house to create sound so that you can hear. On your own, independently, you are going to read pages 10 through 13 from Sound on the Move, and then answer questions 1 and 2. So you're going to complete these two questions after you finish the table with those two sounds that you're going to find in your house. I do want us to check out very quickly page 4 in Sound on the Move so that we can sort of figure out how animals are communicating with one another and who is the source or who is the listener. So make sure you have your text open as I am reading page 4. How do animals communicate? Big or small, animals all over the world communicate. Animals communicate for many reasons. They communicate to find mates, to send warnings, and more. Animals can send some messages using body language and other signals. However, they often need to rely on sound. Different kinds of animals make many different sounds. Still, animal sounds all have one thing in common. All of these sounds have to travel to reach other animals. Sometimes, animal sounds have to travel very long distances. So we know that sound can travel great distances because we know that the mother dolphin can send sound energy to her calf and communicate with them. But when we think about this elephant communicating in its habitat, if this elephant was making sound, the elephant would actually be the source, and perhaps he's trying to send communication to other elephant friends or family, and they would then become the listener, and we would have sound waves traveling throughout this habitat to get and communicate to those other elephants. So we want to think about, one, different animals are going to use different sounds and different ways to communicate. However, they are able to communicate, and they are able to communicate through great and long distances. Let's go ahead and recap our big question. How does sound energy travel? Sounds can travel through different kinds of materials like air, water, and different solid materials.